So there I was, thinking I'd finally cracked the code to adult happiness. You know the drill. Escape the city chaos. Find a nice quiet suburb where the biggest drama is whose turn it is to water the community flower bed. I had visions of peaceful morning coffees, friendly neighbors waving from their perfectly manicured lawns, maybe even joining a book club where we discussed literature instead of whose dog pooped where. Boy, was I in for a reality check that would make a freight train seem gentle. Meet Karen. Not just any Karen. We're talking about the supreme commander of all Karens, the final boss of suburban nightmares, the woman who could probably sense a property violation from 3 zip codes away. I'm convinced she had some sort of supernatural radar for detecting anything that might remotely violate her personal interpretation of neighborhood standards. The first encounter happened exactly 37 minutes after the moving truck left my driveway. I hadn't even unpacked my coffee maker yet. Priorities, people, when I heard this authoritative knock on my door. Not a friendly, welcome to the neighborhood tap, but the kind of knock that suggested someone was ready to serve legal papers. There she stood, clipboard in hand like it was Excalibur, wearing what I can only describe as aggressive casual. The kind of outfit that screams, I have nothing better to do than make your life miserable, and I'm dressed for success. Her hair was styled in that particular way that suggested she'd asked for the I'd like to speak to your manager special at the salon. Hi there, she chirped with the kind of fake sweetness that makes your teeth hurt. I'm Karen Morrison, HOA Compliance Officer for Sunset Meadows. I couldn't help but notice you've placed your garbage cans on the curb. I blinked. Slowly. Because surely this was some sort of welcoming joke I wasn't getting. Yeah, it's garbage day. Her smile tightened like a violin string about to snap. Actually, according to HOA Regulation 24B, subsection 7, garbage cans may only be placed curbside after 6 p.m. the evening before collection and must be removed by 8 a.m. the morning after collection. It's currently 2:17 p.m., which means your cans have been in violation for approximately 6 hours and 17 minutes. I looked at my watch, then at her, then at my garbage cans, sitting there like the criminal masterminds they apparently were. Are you serious right now? Dead serious. She made a note on her clipboard with the flourish of someone signing a death warrant. That'll be a $25 fine for first-time violation. Cash or check is acceptable. And that, dear folks, was my introduction to what I would come to think of as the Karenocalypse. I initially thought this had to be some kind of suburban hazing ritual, like maybe there was a hidden camera somewhere and everyone would jump out yelling, "Welcome to the neighborhood." But as I watched her march back to her house, which, I kid you not, had a security camera pointed directly at my driveway, I realized this wasn't a joke. This was war. Over the next few weeks, I discovered that Karen had apparently appointed herself as the unofficial sheriff of everything that annoyed her. And boy, did I annoy her. Day 3. Fine for parking my car 2.3 inches over my driveway line. Day 7. Fine for having my porch light on past 11 p.m. Apparently it was light pollution. Day 12. Fine for walking my dog on the wrong side of the sidewalk. Day 18. Fine for existing while breathing too loudly near her property line. Okay, I made that last one up, but I swear she was working up to it. Each infraction came with increasingly creative interpretations of HOA rules that I'm pretty sure she was making up as she went along. The woman had turned nitpicking into an art form. She could spot a blade of grass that was 0.2 millimeters too tall from 100 yards away, probably while blindfolded. I tried reasoning with her at first. Rookie mistake. I knocked on her door with a plate of homemade cookies and my best, let's be neighbors smile. Hi Karen, I brought you some cookies and thought maybe we could chat about. Those cookies weren't pre-approved by the HOA Nutrition Committee. She interrupted, not even looking at the plate. Homemade food distribution requires 72-hour advance notice and a complete ingredient list. That's a $50 fine. I stood there holding chocolate chip cookies like they were radioactive waste, wondering if I'd accidentally moved into some sort of suburban dystopia where Betty Crocker was considered a terrorist. The neighbors, bless their battle-worn souls, filled me in on the Karen situation during hushed conversations that felt like we were planning an underground resistance movement. She's been like this for 3 years, whispered Martha from 2 houses down, glancing over her shoulder like Karen might materialize from thin air. We've all just learned to adapt. Adapt apparently meant living in constant fear of clipboard-wielding judgment. These poor people were tiptoeing around their own neighborhood like they were walking through a minefield made of HOA violations. But here's the thing about me. I don't do well with bullies, especially ones who think a clipboard grants them imperial powers over my garbage cans. So I decided to test just how far Karen's delusions of authority extended. I started small. I left my garbage cans out for exactly 30 seconds past the arbitrary deadline. Karen appeared faster than pizza delivery, citation ready. Next, I planted flowers that were technically within HOA guidelines, but were a shade of pink that I knew would make her eye twitch. She spent an hour with a color wheel trying to prove they violated some imaginary hue regulation. Each time, she escalated. Each time, I realized this woman had turned neighborhood harassment into her full-time career. She had binders. Multiple binders. Color-coded binders with tabs and cross-references, and what appeared to be a rating system for different types of violations. This wasn't just someone having a bad day or adjusting to new neighbors. This was Karen operating at peak Karen efficiency, and she was just getting started. The breaking point came on a Tuesday morning when I was minding my own business, sipping coffee on my porch and contemplating whether I'd made a terrible life choice moving to Stepford adjacent suburbia. Karen emerged from her house like a missile with a target lock, power walking across her lawn with the determination of someone who'd just spotted a violation so egregious it required immediate intervention. "Excuse me," she hollered, clipboard already in attack position. "What exactly do you think you're doing?" I looked around, genuinely confused. I was sitting on my own porch, wearing pajamas, holding a coffee mug with a cartoon cat on it. If this was criminal behavior, then I'd apparently been living a life of hardcore crime for decades. "Drinking coffee?" I ventured, because honestly, what else could I say? "In violation of HOA Regulation 23C, she declared triumphantly, like she'd just solved a murder case. Consumption of beverages on front-facing porches is only permitted between 7 a.m. and 7 p.m., and only in approved drinkware. I nearly choked on my coffee. Approved drinkware. No cartoon characters, no text larger than 12-point font, no colors that clash with your home's exterior palette. She was reading this off her clipboard like it was the Constitution. Your mug violates all 3 standards. That was it. That was the moment I realized Karen hadn't just crossed the line. She'd obliterated it, done a victory dance on its remains, and then find the line for inappropriate positioning. I stood up slowly, still holding my cartoon cat mug like it was a weapon of mass destruction. "Karen," I said, with the kind of calm that comes right before a storm, "are you seriously telling me that my choice of coffee mug is now subject to HOA approval?" "Rules are rules," she sniffed, making another note. "That'll be $75 for the violation, plus $25 for arguing with an HOA official." Something in my brain just snapped. Not in a violent way, mind you, but in the way a rubber band snaps when you finally stretch it too far. I'd been patient. I'd been reasonable. I'd even attempted neighborly friendship with homemade cookies. But there's only so much suburban tyranny a person can take before they decide it's time to get creative. "You know what, Karen?" I said, finishing my coffee in one long gulp from my criminally cartoon-festooned mug. "You're absolutely right. Rules are rules." She looked surprised by my sudden agreement, like she'd expected more resistance. And I think it's time everyone in this neighborhood learned exactly what kind of rules we're all living under. The thing about creative people, and I'd always prided myself on thinking outside the box, is that we don't just solve problems. We solve them with style. We solve them in ways that make people stop and think, "Damn, I wish I'd thought of that." Karen had no idea what she'd just unleashed. She thought she was dealing with another pushover neighbor who'd eventually submit to her clipboard-based authority. What she'd actually done was challenge someone whose entire career was built on finding innovative solutions to seemingly impossible problems. I smiled at her, a real smile this time, not the fake neighborly one I'd been trying for weeks. "Thanks for the inspiration, Karen. You've given me a wonderful idea." As I headed back into my house, I could practically hear the gears turning in her head, trying to figure out what I meant. But Karen's imagination was limited to HOA violations and creative interpretations of municipal codes. Mine wasn't. That night, I sat in my kitchen with a legal pad, a laptop, and the kind of focused energy that usually preceded my best work projects. If Karen wanted to play games, I was about to show her what a professional problem solver could accomplish with proper motivation and a complete disregard for conventional thinking. Step 1 was reconnaissance. I spent the next few days casually chatting with neighbors, learning the full scope of Karen's reign of terror. The stories were both hilarious and horrifying. Mrs. Chen got fined for having wind chimes that were apparently too melodious during designated quiet hours. Bob from the corner house received a citation for his dog's bark being unnecessarily enthusiastic. The Johnsons were written up for their Christmas lights creating excessive holiday cheer that violated the neighborhood's subdued seasonal decoration policy. These people weren't just dealing with a difficult neighbor. They were living under the thumb of someone who'd turned petty authority into a performance art piece. But here's what Karen didn't understand about creative types. We see patterns differently. We see solutions where others see only problems. And I saw the perfect solution. I started with something simple, elegant, and absolutely devastating in its suburban passive aggression. On a Wednesday morning, while Karen was doing her usual patrol, yes, she actually patrolled the neighborhood with her clipboard like some sort of HOA stormtrooper, I posted my masterpiece. Missing, below it, in bold type, a healthy, middle-aged woman's self-esteem. Last seen, somewhere near my trash cans when she in beige tactical loungewear at my trash can looking for a reason to call the HOA, with the enthusiasm of a medieval inquisitor. If found, please return to Sunset Meadows HOA. The reward is 1 minute of silence. I included a deliberately blurry photo I'd snapped of her from behind while she was inspecting my mailbox for violations, showing her in her morning pajamas and fuzzy slippers, clipboard clutched to her chest like a security blanket. I posted these flyers everywhere. And I mean everywhere. Telephone poles, community bulletin boards, the little free library, even slipped a few under windshield wipers in the grocery store parking lot. Within hours, they were showing up on Facebook, Nextdoor, Instagram, and TikTok. The neighbors' reaction was immediate and glorious. I heard laughter from houses that had been silent for months. People were actually coming outside again, gathering in small groups, pointing at the flyers and sharing their own Karen stories like war veterans comparing battle scars. Karen's response was predictable. She stormed around the neighborhood like a tornado in sensible shoes, demanding to know who was responsible, threatening lawsuits, fines, and what sounded like exile to some sort of HOA Siberia. She was so busy raging about the flyers that she forgot to inspect anyone's grass height or mailbox positioning. For exactly 2.3 days, we had peace. But I knew Karen better than that by now. This wasn't surrender. This was just her regrouping for the next assault. And sure enough, she came back with reinforcements. A binder full of new regulations she'd apparently spent those peaceful days crafting, each one more absurdly specific than the last. That's when I realized Karen wasn't going to learn from subtle humor and gentle mockery. She was immune to self-reflection the way vampires are immune to garlic. No, if I wanted to solve the Karen problem permanently, I was going to need to escalate to phase 2 of my suburban warfare strategy. Time to bring in the professionals. Here's the thing about creative problem solving. Sometimes the most elegant solution is also the most unexpected. And sometimes, the most unexpected solution involves hiring a crisis intervention specialist who moonlights as a street performer. I found Marcus through a friend of a friend who worked in community theater. Marcus was a trained psychologist with a flair for the dramatic and a weekend hobby of doing guerrilla therapy sessions. Don't ask. Apparently, it's a thing in certain circles. More importantly, Marcus had a gift for showing up at exactly the right moment with exactly the right approach to defuse tense situations. I explained the Karen situation, showed him the evidence. I'd been documenting everything, because I'm not stupid, and outlined my plan. Marcus's eyes lit up like a kid who'd just been told Christmas was happening twice this year. Oh, "This is beautiful," he said, reviewing my notes. "Classic authority displacement with obsessive-compulsive tendencies and a dash of territorial aggression. I can work with this." The setup required perfect timing. I waited until Karen was doing her Thursday morning inspection tour. She had a schedule, because of course she did, making sure she'd have maximum audience from neighbors heading to work or walking their dogs. Right on cue, as Karen approached my driveway with her clipboard ready for whatever fresh violation she'd invented overnight, Marcus appeared. Not dramatically, not obviously, just a friendly-looking guy in khakis and a polo shirt, carrying a small messenger bag, walking up to Karen like he'd been expecting to meet her there. "Excuse me, are you Karen?" he asked with the kind of gentle, professional tone that immediately commanded attention. "I'm Dr. Marcus Williams. I understand you've been having some difficulties with community conflict resolution." Karen stopped dead in her tracks, clipboard frozen mid-swing. "I'm sorry, what?" "I received a call about someone in this neighborhood who might benefit from some crisis intervention support." Marcus continued smoothly, loud enough for the growing audience of casual bystanders to hear clearly. "The description matches you perfectly. Middle-aged woman, clipboard, tendency to focus on minor infractions as a way of avoiding deeper emotional needs." The beauty of Marcus's approach was that he never accused Karen of anything. He just presented himself as someone there to help, speaking in the kind of calm, therapeutic voice that made everyone around them stop what they were doing to listen. "I don't need any help," Karen sputtered, but her voice had lost its usual commanding edge. "Of course not," Marcus agreed easily. "But sometimes when we find ourselves repeatedly engaging in conflicts with neighbors over minor issues, it can be a sign that we're trying to control external circumstances because we feel powerless about something internal. Can you tell me a bit about your childhood relationship with authority figures?" By now, we had quite the audience. Mrs. Chun was gardening with a trowel that hadn't touched dirt. Bob was walking his dog in a perfect circle that kept him within earshot. The Johnsons were both checking their mailbox for the third consecutive time. Everyone was pretending to be busy while obviously watching the best free entertainment the neighborhood had seen in years. "My childhood is none of your business," Karen snapped, but there was something different in her voice now. Uncertainty, maybe even embarrassment. "You're absolutely right," Marcus nodded. "But I'm curious, when you're writing these citations, how does that make you feel? Powerful? In control? Safe?" That's when something magical happened. For the first time since I'd met her, Karen looked small. Not physically, but emotionally. Like she was shrinking into herself, realizing that her neighbors were all watching her be psychoanalyzed by a stranger on the sidewalk. The conversation continued for maybe 10 minutes, with Marcus never raising his voice, never being anything but professionally caring, and never letting Karen regain her usual commanding presence. He was a master at work, and every question he asked made it clearer to everyone watching that Karen's behavior wasn't about HOA regulations at all. Finally, Karen couldn't take it anymore. "I don't have to listen to this," she declared, but even her indignation sounded hollow now. "Of course you don't," Marcus agreed. "But the help is here whenever you're ready for it. Sometimes the bravest thing we can do is admit that our way of connecting with others isn't working." Karen fled. There's no other word for it. She practically ran back to her house, slamming the door behind her with a sound that echoed through the entire neighborhood. Marcus nodded politely to the assembled crowd, packed up his messenger bag, and walked away like nothing unusual had happened. The silence lasted exactly 3 seconds before someone started laughing. Then someone else joined in. Then the whole neighborhood erupted in applause like we'd just witnessed the end of a particularly satisfying movie. For the next 3 days, Karen didn't leave her house. Not once. No morning patrols, no violation citations, no clipboard sightings. On day 4, she posted her resignation from the HOA board on the community website. On day 5, a for sale sign appeared in her yard. By the end of the week, she was gone. The neighborhood threw an impromptu block party that weekend. Someone brought a clipboard, and we ceremonially burned it in a backyard fire pit while sharing our favorite Karen stories. It was cathartic, hilarious, and absolutely necessary. At the end of the evening, my neighbors approached me with an idea I never saw coming. They wanted to elect me as the new HOA president. Thanks for the vote of confidence, I told them, but I never planned on holding any kind of neighborhood authority position. Besides, looking around at this group, I think it's obvious I don't really have a choice. You've all proven you can handle your own business just fine. Everyone laughed, and I continued. How about this instead? I'll take the position of creative problem-solving consultant, and we implement exactly one HOA rule. Don't be a Karen. And if a new Karen ever shows up, well, I grinned at the crowd. Let's just say I've got a few more ideas up my sleeve. The applause was unanimous. And that, dear folks, is how I accidentally became the neighborhood's unofficial Karen whisperer. The position comes with excellent benefits, peaceful morning coffee, friendly neighbors, and the satisfaction of knowing that sometimes the best way to deal with a bully is to get creative. Thank you for being with us. Please share in the comments where you are watching from and whether you liked everything, and see you next time.